Good day, everybody, and welcome to this Easy Equities webinar chat. It's been a while since I've hosted one, and I'm particularly delighted to do so today because I'm joined by Steven Boykey Sidley, who's the author of It's Mine, which is the book that we're going to be chatting about. Boykey is and I'm biased here because I've known him for a while, but he is a brilliant writer, author, academic, musician, entrepreneur, and crypto guru. So I'm really delighted that he's joining us, and thanks for taking the time. Boykey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. And I could just say to your listeners that knowing you as I do, you actually have read all those books behind you.
I have indeed. And I'm really pleased to have added yours to the bookshelf as well. So we'll jump right into it. When did your book launch?
Well, there have been a couple of launches. There was a launch in the UK where the book was published out of the UK by the Legend Times Group, and that sort of hit the shelves at the end of August, but I didn't go to London for a launch. The launch in South Africa was at the University of Johannesburg just a couple of days ago, and so it's on shelves now, and Kindle and Amazon and all the regular places.
Great. Well, pleased that we're getting you early as the book launches, chatting to our audience. And just before we started, I was telling Boykey that we've got about 400,000 Easy Equities users that have accessed crypto products on the platform. So there's a high interest in this asset class. But before we get into the details of the book, maybe a short summary of what it's about.
Okay, so most of the world's public attention has been focused on cryptocurrencies and prices and fortunes made and fortunes lost and grifters and scammers and criminals, when in fact the world of crypto is a very much broader church than cryptocurrencies. When I talk about crypto, I talk about a whole bunch of creatures that came out of the swamp, most of them in the past 4 years. It started with crypto with Bitcoin 13 years ago. And then in 2015, a new blockchain appeared called Ethereum, which your crypto guys will know all about it. But the difference with that blockchain is that there was a programming language bolted to the top, which allowed dreamers and inventors to come up with new creatures. And these creatures suddenly burst to life in 2020. There was, and this is not a complete list, NFTs, stablecoins, of course, cryptocurrencies, Web3, GameFi, Metaverse, decentralized autonomous organizations, all of them different industries, and all of them fueled by the same crypto magic, and all of them upsetting a legacy way of doing things. So the book is a complete sweep across that breadth of all those new industries, including cryptocurrencies, which is the one that's best known, and a discussion of the philosophy that underpins it, a discussion of the technology that underpins it. There's no technical jargon in this book whatsoever. And a discussion is why this is so transformative and why it will become as important as the great technologies of the world over the past 100 years.
It's a brilliant.
Oh, sorry. I suppose I missed most important point over here. What is common about all these things, the NFTs and cryptocurrencies and stablecoins and the digital identities, is that all of them afford human beings a different way to own things. Not only a different way to own things, but a way to own things that is unprecedented in human history. And perhaps we can get into that a bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a brilliant elevator pitch because I think certainly for me, reading the book reminded me that crypto has only been around pretty much since 2013 in the way that I knew it when a white paper was published. It was interesting reading about that. But you also talk about cryptography. I don't even know if I pronounced that correctly, which you say the mathematics of secret keeping has been around for thousands and thousands of years. So on the one hand, it's technology that's been around for a long time, and then all the stuff that we know about now. But I want to get straight into what you've said now. And one of the chapters, Ground Zero, you talk about owning yourself, and that was a really interesting concept for me, and I was wondering if you could maybe chat us a little bit more about that.
Right. So owning yourself, which has to do about our identities, which is something we all understand personally, turns out to be something that is both diluted by the real world and not always safe in the real world. I'll give you an example. When we are born, there's this document called a birth registration certificate at the hospital, filled out by the nurse. That goes off to some state institution. It gets turned into a birth certificate, which gets turned into an ID book, which gets turned into a passport, actually the other way around, which gets turned into a driver's license and a student card. And all your other expressions of identity come from that one sole document, the birth certificate. Now, the problem with that is you give your trust to a state institution to issue that birth certificate to you, and to keep it safe, because if Home Affairs loses the record of your birth certificate, you are a non-person and you cannot participate in society. And we all know of examples that are in the newspaper all the time where people have lost documentation or never had it in the first place, and they're excluded. And so number one, that identity, just the birth certificate and all the things that flow from there, are not secure. They are in the hands of a trustee, and that trustee in this case is Home Affairs. In America, it's a different one. More importantly than that, what you reveal of yourself is not necessarily the same. What you want to reveal of yourself is not necessarily the same for all people. You will reveal of yourself a different thing to your mother-in-law than what you want to reveal to somebody who's recruiting you for a job. You don't have any documents that allow you to do that. You want to get into a bar, so you want to show how old you are, so you hand over your driver's license so that the bouncer can see how old you are. But it's got other information there. That's none of his business. All you'd like that person to see is a photograph and your age. That trusteeship, where you put your trust in other people, means your identity is insecure, as I said, and dilutive, because it doesn't capture you. What are you as an individual? Well, you could say you are of your mother and your father and your siblings, and then your friends, and then your colleagues, and then your other institutions. But the truth is that you change every day as an experience happens. So your true identity is not rock solid, and a birth certificate is the most rock solid thing you can possibly imagine. And what crypto affords is a different way to express an identity. And in Estonia and other countries, they've started using NFTs to deliver proof of citizenship. So the stuff is coming on blockchain.
So why are most governments still so scared of it? Or, I mean, is it losing control? What is it? Why do governments not use it more? Why does South Africa Home Affairs not jump at the opportunity to use the technology better?
Okay, so the true answer to that is that state institutions, any nation state institutions, become ossified and sclerotic over decades and decades and decades of usage. So if you had to say, listen, I have a much better way to express a title deed for my house or the registration for my car, we put an NFT and it happens in seconds and it can't be lost and nobody can steal it and nobody can change it. You have to change an entire machine behind the scenes that has been in place for decades and sometimes hundreds of years. So that's the one throttle over there. It's just very hard to change government processes or institutional processes. The second one, which you refer to, is loss of control. Governments live and die via their control. Now, if they're good and they provide services for their citizens, then we want to give them control. If it's a good government. You know, I could point out ones that I think are good, like the Netherlands or Denmark or one of those places where they provide their citizens. We want them to have the control because they do not abuse it. Once a government cannot control, then there are lots of terrible things that happen, such as, well, you're not giving me any services, so I'm going to cheat on my taxes. Governments don't want that. And with crypto, that is possible. So much of this book, at least the philosophical side of it, sits at the tension between the individual and the state. And it is in the hands of the state and the institutions now. That power is asymmetric. And what a crypto is doing is moving that power back to the individual.
Hmm. So taking a bit of a level down from governments and sovereign states, looking at banks, financial institutions, something that is so important. There's definitely an adoption in more and more areas of the technology. And what I also loved about your book is constantly makes the point it's not about coins. You know, many people think cryptos, that's what it is. It's a couple of coins. And some it's just Bitcoin, but it's the technology that's really interesting. Do you think that mainstream banks, and let's focus on South Africa, are going to be adopting this technology more and more? Or do you think they too are too scared of losing control and revenue?
Okay, so there is a big difference between what's happening at the South African banks, which is not very much, and what's happening at the great global banks of the world. So I did a competitive analysis recently for a client as to who's using blockchain rails for whatever. Payment is only one area, but there are lots of other areas. And the biggest banks in the world are all not putting their toes in. They're all jumping in, fully clothed right now. JP Morgan being the biggest in the world, Morgan Stanley, Bank of England, Societe Generale, Bank of Britain, all of them have blockchain projects. And some of them, they are more than projects. They are tokenizing their assets onto blockchain. Visa, 2 weeks ago made the most startling announcement, which has caused ripples all over the world. What they said is, we have a problem, and that you, Carl, go into Pick and Pay and you use your Visa card and you get the approval 5 seconds later, you walk out with your goods. But the merchant doesn't get settled until the next day, and sometimes 2 days. And if that credit card was from a foreign country, they can wait a week for settlement. Visa just announced 500,000 merchants they are putting onto crypto rails. The merchants gets settled 5 seconds after the purchase. That is a value proposition that is scary to anybody who holds the power over those merchant settlements. So the dam walls are breaking open. Well, again, while most of the people think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and Dogecoin and ETH and all those coins, there's a whole separate area of crypto in which the magic of the blockchain is being brought to bear on real world solutions and cutting out dross and wastage. Sorry, I'm rambling on, but I want to give you one statistic.
It's okay. Good. It's good because it takes me to the question I want, sort of moving the level down then in a South African context.
Yeah.
So as taxpayers, we all contribute to grants, happily so. But how do those grants get paid? And I was wanting to ask you how you would imagine SASSA grant system and payments working better using this technology than what we're currently doing, either through a post bank or a ShopRite checker or the like. I mean, is that far-fetched, or is there something that you think is around the corner?
It's around the corner. Well, around the corner depends on the speed of movement of South African governmental institutions, and we don't have I don't have much optimism about that. But it's already here, not in South Africa, in El Salvador, where they legalized crypto. It became legal tender, and everybody said this is never going to work. People are never going to be able to use their phones to get money, to receive money, to send some money. And there's now over 80% acceptance of using crypto, not only to buy bread, but to receive remittances and to receive government pensions directly within seconds with nobody in the middle. That middleman story that we talk about with banks hold your money in trust, and we trust them. They don't generally lose our money. I mean, you may sit on hold for a long time when you call them. They may make a mistake, but they get it right. But you pay a lot of money for that trust. They are the trustees. And I wanted to find out for this book and the research, how big is this trustee industry? How much of the world's assets are in the custody of and attested to by somebody other than the owner? It's 35% of world GDP, global GDP. It is a massive industry, and all of it is under threat by crypto, because that trust can be devolved into mathematics so that you don't have to trust a third party anymore.
Fascinating. So, I mean, putting a plug in here for easy equities and easy crypto, and as somebody that constantly tries to learn in the space and still feels a little bit overwhelmed by all the information, if you look, there are, I think there are over 60 coins now on easy crypto, but Don and the team from Easy Crypto putting together bundles, and a lot of those bundles are just a collection, as an opportunity for people to get exposure to some of the technologies that you're talking about. So if anybody hasn't checked out those bundles, do so. There are a couple available on Easy Equities, and they're all available on easycrypto.coza. But for me, it's a really interesting way to get exposure to this asset class. And I heard from my colleague Earl earlier this week that crypto is the fastest or the best achieving asset class in 2023. So that was also really good. But getting back to
let me put a plug in for you guys as well over here. One of the great Achilles heels of this entire industry is it's difficult to understand and it's difficult to interact with. It's a beast. People use jargon that nobody cares about, private keys and hash rates and all that stuff. Nobody's got the time, the telemetry, the interest, the broadband. They want an easy interface, and they want a customer hotline. And that is the sort of thing that people like you, like Easy Equities, sit in that portal between real human beings and their real money and the world of cryptocurrencies. And it's absolutely critical to the maturation of the field that there are places like you to invest your money.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And Don and the team were pleased to hear that, because they've got lots of exciting new things they're rolling out. And it takes me to, I wanted you to chat to us a little bit about your chapter where you talk, chapter 12, an expression of common ownership and purpose, and the term that you use there. Maybe share a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Right. So one of these creatures that I talked about that sits alongside the currencies and NFTs and digital IDs is called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. What are these things? I'll give you a short anecdote of how it works. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit of how business works, okay? which we don't really think about. If you want to start a business, you have to choose whether to start a corporation or a partnership or a limited liability company. There are a couple of structures. And the paperwork involved in setting up a business, anybody who's trying to do it themselves, which I had in South Africa, it sucks out your will to live. You've got to fill in form after form after form after form and interface with a thing called the CIPC or CICP, whatever it's called. It's horrendous. What DAOs are is the abilities to set up an organization of purpose, which could be a business, it could be a charity, it could be a knitting circle, instantaneously, where all of those documentations, which is just a human fiction, are embedded in the smart contract. Now, the most famous example of that, there are 500 copies of the US Constitution. And one of them came up for sale, very expensive, tens of millions of dollars, and it was going to auction at Sotheby's. And this one guy looked at it and he said, geez, you know what, I think that we should ask the crypto community to buy this, because if some private collector buys it, they're going to put it in their basement, nobody will ever see it. But the auction was 6 days away. So he set up a decentralized autonomous organization where the rules of the organization was to buy the copy of the Constitution. And everybody who put money in was given an equal right to vote as what to do with that Constitution. What it was bought. He raised 47 million in 3 days. Now you try to set up a corporation and a partnership and open a bank account and get 47 million. We're talking 6 months, not 3 days.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're thinking just from an Easy Equities perspective, when we list a new property on Easy Property, we it's a new company. We go through that whole SIPC process. It's a cumbersome and an expensive process, producing financials every year, et cetera, et cetera. So we're very much applying on our minds within the Easy Property space, using this technology to have a far more efficient structure and something where the users will have far more direct ownership. So lots of applications. I've got a question from Don, who's our head of product and looks after much of what we do in cryptocurrency, that says, if cryptocurrencies overshadow fiat, how might this change global power dynamics and the concept of nation states?
So that is the raw nerve of this entire thing, is that the nation state is very terrified of this industry for that very reason. If they see a future in which money is private, they lose the entire raison d'etre of being able to have their handles on the wheels of the economy. And so what you see now, and what you've seen in the past 5 years, is enormous pushback because of this. You've got the SEC in America, you've got the CFTC in America, you've got different organizations around the world who are saying, stop, regulate, don't do this. If we lose control of the money, we lose control of everything. And that is actually true to a certain extent. Because in a democracy, you want your government to provide roads and police forces and hospitals. And so you would like, and electricity in our case, you would like them to have the money to do that. So I am not a breathless evangelist for the complete anonymity of cryptocurrency, because I believe that regulation should be rational and clear enough so that it catches the bad guys and lets the good guys innovate and save and make money. And you're now seeing that specifically. Let me name some countries: the UK, Switzerland, Portugal, Dubai, Singapore, and funnily enough, bizarrely, Hong Kong, even though China tried to ban crypto. So the gates of regulations are suddenly starting to open. But of course, when America sneezes, everybody catches cold. So we have to wait for America to get their regulations to be more acceptable to how wonderful is technology, and it will happen, but regulation is important.
I've got another question in terms of cryptocurrency locally, just which ones have been adopted where, and what should South Africa be using as a cryptocurrency? And I suspect it's, using it merchants, people can deposit Bitcoin on our platform now, but are other coins widely accepted? And do you see that happening?
So, Vela and Luna and a couple of the other exchanges and yourselves deal in many coins. And, when I start talking about which coins are the ones that are widely accepted and should be widely accepted, I tread on dangerous ground, Carl, as you know. This is not financial advice, et cetera, et cetera. I can only tell you what I've done. I have since 2017 invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum. and to 90% of my portfolio, perhaps 95% of my portfolio, which is quite large. I really bet the farm on this stuff. And I played around with various others along the way. But the truth of the matter is that those are the only two cryptocurrencies which are completely decentralized, which I trust personally. There are others which will go up and down, maybe more than Bitcoin, but it requires more of a gambling. I am of an age that my risk profile is perhaps different to many of the people who invest with you. There is also ZARP. Let me talk about ZARP. ZARP is a South African stable coin, which is now being backed by Old Mutual. This is just hot off the press, to 100 million Rand in liquidity pool. And it is the South African equivalent of USDC or Tether. It's a stable coin. I urge all of you to go look up ZARP, because that is what South Africans are going to use to remain in the world of crypto in South Africa while they're deciding where to put their money next. It will be in ZARP.
Excellent. That's useful. And if I know Don, which I do, I suspect he's already busy writing a blog now for the community on that, whether he's agreeing with you or not. So look out for that. I want to ask you a final question. But before I do, I loved your title because it, you know, the wordplay on mining and cryptocurrency mining, you know, obviously the ownership, which is what the book's largely about. And yeah, so there's really interesting wordplays. And I just want to underline to everybody that it is a very accessible book. It's not a dumbed down book. So I think it's an intellectual book, but it's an easily understood book. So I would strongly encourage everybody to get hold of it. You can buy it through Daily Maverick. And I suspect in bookstores easily as well. But online, Daily Maverick, as Steven said, they're in bookstores already. Easy Equities is going to be handing out a couple. So Don will choose a couple of random, well, not random people. Don will randomly choose a couple of people that are on this webinar, and we'll get a copy of the book to you. But the last question I want to ask you, and links to your musical interest and playing a musical instrument. What views and thoughts do you have about crypto and the technology and blockchain in the world of music? I mean, some people think AI and this technology is making us less creative, and people who are arty should be frightened by it. I mean, I think it's a fabulous opportunity in so many ways to be more creative. But yeah, interested to hear your views on it.
All right, you've chosen my current most favorite dinner party rant.
Good.
One of the problems with AI is that when we interact with AI, we're at a point where we sometimes won't know whether we're interacting with AI, interacting with a human. And that is true in the creative fields as well. We're very close to the point where we won't know whether the music was created by AI, created by humans. So AI has this provenance problem. Where in the world did this thing originate? Was there real artists behind it? And it's very applicable to music right now. I just saw the new site called Stability AI, in which you can generate music, which is completely AI generated, and it's very, very good. You can't tell it's made by a machine. Crypto sits on the other side of the spectrum. It creates certainty of provenance. You absolutely know via the private-public key pair, the cryptography, mathematics, whiz-bang stuff. Absolutely, immutably, you can prove who owns this content. If you join human IP, human creativity, and you mint an NFT for every single thing that a human does, including music, you have a way to separate human creativity from AI creativity. So the joining of these two things is fascinating and fabulous, and it's the next steps. I read a paper the other day that everything will be minted with an NFT. I'll give you an example outside of music. Sorry to ramble on. One more example. When you travel the internet during the day, you go to a travel site, you go to Gmail, you go to WhatsApp, you go to some other site, all that journey, your footprint is extracted and sold. It's extracted and sold by Google or the sites, and it's sold to advertisers, and it's monetized. And you have no way to own that and demand payment or recompense or accreditation if your daily travels through the web was owned by you via NFTs that were constantly minted. You would have to be paid for them monetizing that. And that is what Web3 is all about. And it's the same technology as Bitcoin.
Awesome. I said it's the last question, but I'm going to give Don the last word. And before I do, Jan's got a question there. Maybe just repeat that Old Mutual backed South African stablecoin.
ZARP, Z-A-R-P.
Thank you. And Don asked a couple of questions, but I think just the one is values like reputation or ideas being tokenized and traded. Your thoughts on that? Yeah, I'm particularly interested. Reputation being tokenized.
Yeah, as long as your reputation is tied to something more than an opinion of yourself. if it's tied to your output, then it falls exactly into the last conversation I was having. Any output that you have, which defines what your reputation is, can be attached to you via an NFT, via a crypto token.
Thank you very much, Steve. So as a reminder, Steven Boykey Sidley, the book's called It's Mine. You can get it from Daily Maverick online bookstores. Easy Equities will be giving away a couple of copies. We'll get a blog up with this webinar, if not today, then over the weekend, with links to where you can buy them. Steven's spoken to the Easy community before. We'll get that YouTube link up as well. Yeah, as an author of a couple of books, fiction and non-fiction, I would encourage you to check out what else Steven has written. And also, he is married to another talented person who has many roles also, and one of them is also as an author. So if you're browsing for Steven Boykey Sidley, check out Kate Sidley, sometimes referred to as half the writer. You'll see why when you come across some of her books. But check out Kate Sidley's books as well. So, Steven, thank you very much. I'm sure that you're going to be pumping out books at the rate of knots, because if I look what's happened since 2013, when that white paper appeared, to what's happening now, and what's happened from your last book until now, there's just a lot. So look forward to the next book. When can we expect it, by the way? Tell us.
As soon as I get another publishing deal, I have a proposal out about AI, so that's going to be fun. Hopefully somebody will give me a publication deal, and then in 2 years from now, we'll have a book.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on the book, and thanks for spending time with us.
So easy, so easy. So easy.